that we create most of the currency in circulation. It's this added layer that is the entire reason you, me, all of us are not in debt. And when you know all of this and you know how to use the law and equity to seek restitution, the simple truth is those that fully comprehend all of this win every single time. Hey folks, it's Gavin here once again. I've got another video for you. Now in the last one, I drew back the curtain on the fiat monetary system, okay, that we use. And in that video, I explained that there's another layer to this whole thing and that we create most of the currency in circulation. Now, it's this added layer that is the entire reason you, me, all of us are not in debt. And when you know all of this and you know how to use the law and equity to seek restitution, simple truth is those that fully comprehend all of this win every single time. So what I wanted to cover in this video is basically how all this stuff works, you know, and it starts with the point that we sign a credit agreement. And notice the word here, credit agreement, guys, because you may think, I used to think this, that we sign a contract, and we don't. They are two very different things. The agreement or credit agreement even says it's a credit agreement on it, right? Anyway, a credit agreement is securitized upon signature, and long story short, that's where a trust is created, of which we are the beneficiaries. Now again, don't worry about what any of that stuff means, because in this video I'm actually going to explain what that trust is. But simply put, you, me, we create the currency or cash that is purportedly lent to us. And again, remember that from the last video I showed you how the banks literally do not lend us anything. So if we go for a quick side note on that, if you haven't seen that video, you should see a link above where my finger's pointing right now, where you can check that whole thing out. But let's get back to this. The banks don't lend anything, and that's an absolute verifiable fact. So what actually happens then when we sign a credit agreement? Well, you create the cash or currency, and that alleged debt then is essentially settled in full once your credit agreement is securitized, which basically means you are in simple terms given that cash by the bank that you think they're lending to you, but which actually was created by you when you signed the credit agreement. So just let that sink in for a minute. It's absolutely true, all verifiable. So let's just say that you signed that credit agreement for your new car, okay? It's slightly different. In this case, we create that currency and that's then paid to the agent or the keeper of the car. Now as a quick side note, notice I said keeper. No one owns their vehicle in this system, guys. Hence, you are called a keeper. It's all on that logbook if you want to go look at it. They don't say you're the owner. Anyway, if this is already blowing your mind, I get it. I've been there, right? And if you think this isn't true, it's actually all in this book here. It sits behind me, Equity and Trust. Anyone can buy it. Nothing I'm sharing here is information that you cannot find online or in books yourself. And I really do encourage you to do this stuff. Don't just believe what I'm saying. They don't teach us this in schools because, simply put, in this system, they want to keep us stupid and ignorant of the truth. But trust and equity are very real, and we can access equity. And here's actually a really obvious clue I want to share with you, and it's been staring you in the face all the time. Do you make payments on your debt, or do you make repayments? A payment would, in the traditional sense, pay back the loan. A repayment is paying back the principal that you created with a heap of interest just added to it, just to rub it all in. So go check that out. We make repayments in this system, not payments. Anyway, let's get into trust, because this is the key piece. And don't worry, this can be a bit boring, especially when you're reading a big book like that. I'm not going to go through all of this stuff in detail. I'm going to give you the main component parts so you basically get it, right? And you can see how this stuff works. And if you want to dig in, there's the book. So I'm just going to share the basics that you really do have to know if you want to actually go and do something about these debt collectors or whoever else is actually chasing you. Excuse my dog. Now, why do trust and equity go hand in hand? It's really simple, guys. Because equity as a jurisdiction within the court system deals with trust matters, and it can only get it there. We are beneficiaries, and this is where we are heard. Now, don't worry about what all of that stuff means. I'll explain on another video. In fact, what I'll do is I I can pull back the curtains on the legal system and I can dig into the different courts so you can understand that visually. It's nowhere near as complicated as we've been led to believe. But simply put, again, trust and equity go together because we are the beneficiaries of the trust that we create when we sign that credit agreement. Fact. It's all in here. So let's basically start with understanding the basics of a trust. And to do that, I'm going to dig into the trust structure, and I'm going to show you a slide, and I'm going to walk you through how it all comes together. Catch you on it. Now, this is exactly why you are not in debt. And when we know this truth and we access law and equity to reveal this truth, this is simply why we can stop these debt collections in their track. Now, again, there is a lot more to this, so I'm giving you the high level. I just want to get the basics in there. I've obviously been studying this stuff for a couple of years now, and I know in going through that, there's a lot of things that I perhaps didn't even need to bother reading. So I'm in this fortunate position right now, having kind of learnt it, practiced it, got wins using it, where I can kind of simplify a lot of it. Now, this structure even can be found in that book that I showed you, Equity and Trust by Alistair Hudson. So again, don't just take my word for it. Dig in, go find this stuff out for yourself if you want to, or even book a call with me. I love just obviously talking about this stuff. It's absolutely flipped my life on its head, as you could well imagine. But let's get into this. So there are lots of different types of trusts, but we are really dealing with what's called an express trust, because this is what we create when we sign that credit agreement. Okay. Now, what I want to do is kind of give you the understanding of what is it you're even looking at here. You know, what is a settlor? You know, what's the trustee? I keep saying that you're the beneficiary, but why does that even matter? What does that really mean here? So there is a whole part of law that governs trusts called trust law. Obviously, it's the clues in the title, but that governs the way this stuff works. So again, I'm just giving you the simplification. I'm not giving you all of the kind of the substance behind it. You can go verify all of that stuff yourself. I'd be here all week talking about it. So what I really wanted to start with saying is you've got three elements here, right? Three corners of this triangle: settlor, trustee, beneficiary. So who is the settlor? So basically, the settlor is us at the beginning, before the trust is created. Okay, now the settlor basically signs the credit agreement. Okay, and upon signature of that credit agreement, creates the express trust, and the settlor, us, holds what's called absolute title to the property. Now, don't worry too much about that word property, but do remember in one of my earlier videos, and again I'll share the links for this, it's all on the channel, I talk about the Law of Property Act, and that's so important, and the reason why it's relevant to this, because we are basically the individual that holds absolute title to the property, which is to be settled on trust or creation of the trust. Okay, so in simple terms, we sign an agreement, the agreement is securitized and becomes what's called a trust res. Now, before I get into trustee and beneficiary, let me explain what a trust res is. For a trust to be official, okay, there have to be what are called three certainties of a trust. You have certainty of objects, you have certainty of subject matter, and you have certainty of intent. Okay, now certainty of subject matter is specifically where the trust res comes in. The trust res is the securitized agreement, which is now a note, the original note, and that becomes the object that is essentially placed in the trust, of which we are the beneficiary of. That's how we're creating this currency. Okay, the trustee then is basically part of what's called the legal title. So remember I said we have absolute title. This is where equity comes in. So again, don't worry too much about the ins and outs of this. I'm just giving you the high level. You've basically got legal title and you've got equitable title. Okay, we hold equitable title because we are the beneficiary. And if you remember in the other video that I talked about, where I talked about equity as a jurisdiction, that it trumps legal law, this again, I hope for your understanding the power of the beneficiary here, right? So the trustee is basically appointed on creation of the trust. Now in our world, That's going to be, you know, you've got the big banks, HSBCs. I know they're a trustee of one of the matters that I'm dealing with right now, as an example. You'll be familiar with a lot of the names, although they do keep that hidden. Often the trustee will not even be with the agent or bank that you got the alleged loan with. Okay, so they basically have the legal title in the trust. Okay, and let's move that on now to the beneficiary. Who is the beneficiary? Well, you are the beneficiary, and it's really simple. You have all rights to the specific terms and nature of the trust. The beneficiary is always going to have a right to compel the trustees to carry out the terms of the trust. Now, if you think about what's happening to us, and let's just say your own situation right now, you signed an agreement, you got a loan, you got a car, whatever it was you got, right? Let's just keep it simple and say there was apparently this loan of money that we've already established doesn't exist in this system. There is no money. It's cash or currency. Money has to be backed by something of value, and in this fiat system, there is nothing of value. Now, by the way, that's all in that other video where I talk about the financial system. But the beneficiary then has all the rights to compel the trustees to carry out the terms of the trust. But if we think about it from our perspective, what's really happening, we're signing a credit agreement, we think we're being lent the money, we are now called a debtor, right? Settlor, you're now called a debtor, not the settlor. And we go about repaying the principal that we've already settled in full with our signature. And they basically hide the fact that this trust even exists. But that's where, if you remember what I talked about in one of the other videos, if you're dealing with a debt collection agent as an example, notice of assignment, which is pretty much where they all fail anyway, deed of assignment. This is really specific to the trust and the chose. Okay, so the deed of assignment, and there's case law now supporting this, and case law cannot be ignored by a judge, says that they have to evidence the fully redacted deed of assignment. And a deed of assignment basically lays bare the existence of the trust, because it will name the trustee as one thing that it will name. And the simple fact that there's a trustee means there has to be a trust, and therefore you are the beneficiary. And this is why these matters can only be heard in equity, because at law, remember what I said about the trustee, they have legal title. We have equitable title to this trust. So we cannot be heard, and this is basically the reason why they've kind of covered over the existence of equity, but it is very real and it very much does exist. So this is really what it's all about, guys. It's this simple. Okay, this diagram is probably the simplest, perfect example that I've ever come across. You are the settlor, you sign the agreement, and the agreement securitizes and becomes what's called the trust res, and under the three certainties of a trust, certainty of objects, certainty of subject matter, i.e. the trust res, and certainty of intent, a trust is created, the res is placed into the trust, a trustee is appointed and who has legal title, the beneficiary, the settlor, then becomes the beneficiary, again, which is us, where we have equitable interest, and using the legal system and then equity, we can expose the existence of the trust. Now, if you want to know what that really means, I'm not going to share that on this video. I've got to be a little bit careful with what I'm kind of saying here. You can book a call with me and I can dig in with this in a lot more detail. I've got the experience of having done this stuff in the system, guys. Okay, so I've got first, this is not theory, this is, I've done it. I can tell you it. All right, so feel free to book a call. Happy to share this information and help out wherever I can. So let's kind of move on. Express trusts are very relevant too. Now remember this, section 53(1) of the Law of Property Act. Section 51 of the Law of Property Act. All of these pieces of legislation, if you are going to do something about this, are going to be legislation that you'll become so familiar with. You'll know it like the back of your hand. Alright? So this is basically the trust, and this is the reason why you are not in debt, because you are a beneficiary. Everything in this system is a trust. What's an obvious one that you've heard of? You've never really paid attention. The NHS trusts. Right? Think about it. Who are the beneficiaries then of these trusts? So that's just one other thing. Now, I'm going to do another video and I'm going to pull back the curtains on equity so you can really understand equity and why you are a beneficiary and why you hold all of the power in this system if you know how to use it. It's this knowledge, guys, with action that basically will set you free, because, as I keep saying, you're not in any debt. Now, if you've got any questions on this, if you want to comment on the video, please comment away, please like it, please subscribe to the channel. I really want to sort of do something here and start sharing this knowledge with lots and lots of people, and just helping out as many folks as I can understand the truth, learn the truth, action the truth, and really become free of all of these different agents that are coming against us. Remember the film The Matrix? I think it was what's his name, Keanu Reeves, who said The Matrix was a documentary. And actually, if you know what you know when I'm teaching you this stuff, and you go back and watch The Matrix, you'll see that there's absolutely the truth. So I just wanted to leave you with that little fun fact. I'll catch you on the next one.